We are live. So we want to say welcome to everyone that has joined us live in the past, that's here with us today, and the people that are going to be watching this, later on this week. We have two awesome guests here, Zach Day, our Director of Data Analytics and Surveys here at MRA, and then Kristie Haase, who's our Director of Employee Engagement here at MRA. So I talked with both of them this morning. We're really excited to dive into our benchmark compensation survey today. So I want to start with an easy question. Zach, I'll start with you. What is the benchmark survey? Why is it important? Kristie, we'll just start with that.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for having me, Courtney. Thanks for setting this up, and hello to everybody that's viewing and will be viewing this presentation. The benchmark survey is one that we do annually as a part of our member benefits. Participation in our surveys allows our members to access the variety of information that we have. Benchmarking is a practice that happens across many different organizations. It's a valued practice in terms of making sure that you are paying fairly or paying accurately or paying with intent to your employees. So this benchmark survey is looking at positions that happen across the vast majority of organizations. Think about the commonalities of organizations, your HR departments, your accounting departments, those managerial positions, executive positions as well, to give you an indication of one-stop shop for the bulk of your positions in your organization, depending on what industry you're in. We were able to collect 473 jobs in this survey, which is a lot of information, a lot of data points. And we had over 13,000 participants, not 13,000, 1,300. I would love 13,000 participants. 1,300 participants in this study, which equates to over 50,000 data points of employee salary information. Benchmarking is very much averages. We are taking the collected results of our employer-sourced information and providing it back to our members and those that purchase this survey for an evaluation of where the market pay is for a variety of different positions. So benchmarking is very much taking a look at the averages and making sure that you are understanding where your compensation is for positions in your organization against the averages of what we've collected.
That was a very nice intro to what benchmark is.
Well, thank you, Courtney.
You're so welcome. So Kristie, I want to turn it over to you. Zach touched on what it is, but I want to know from your perspective and the employee engagement side, why is it important?
Well, I could talk for a long time on that, but I'll try to just hit the highlights. It's important to benchmark, as Zach mentioned, to get the averages for your positions. I love how our report also gives you median salary value, and it gives you the 25th and the 75th. So we give you a nice range, and that is critical for any HR and senior leadership team when evaluating your comp philosophy and your comp strategy. There are times when, well, there are times, and then there's also positions in which you're going to want to say, yep, we want to be right at the average. We want to be at the market rate or the midpoint of the market. Strategically, there's also going to be times or certain positions where you're going to want to be above that midpoint. And believe it or not, there's also times when you're going to want to be below for a certain position that you might strategically say, we want to intentionally bring them in lower than midpoint. And as they progress through skills, we want to bump them up. So there's a lot of context that the benchmark data provide, and using that, at every publication, each time we publish a survey, that gives you a refreshed data set. But also in the past year or so, your business conditions may have changed. And as we all know, coming out of 2020, we have a lot of turnover. We have a lot of people reevaluating where they want to be and what they want to do. This is the perfect time to use our data in conjunction with your strategy to say, what do we want to focus on? What's critical for us in 2021 and 2022? Zach, did I miss anything there?
No, I think that's our intent with this study. We, in practice, want to provide a source of information. That's kind of how we view ourselves, as a source of information, but it's important to understand, for your strategy of your compensation strategy, to have multiple sources to it. We are not claiming to be the end all be all. We are a additional resource to it. Now, we might be the most accurate and the best collected. I'll go to bat on that. But we are, to Kristie's point, we intend to make this data accessible and available for the purpose of action. Everything that we do out of our surveys and collection of information is for an action purpose. And when taking a look at the compensation and evaluating and benchmarking to your positions, it's important to take action and take a strategic thought to them, because as Kristie mentioned, we are producing averages, and that is the average for the market, the market of our membership of those positions. But it's an intentful decision on when to apply that average as you're looking through the variety of positions in your organization, understanding the importance to it, especially as we get into the conversation around what to do out of the pandemic, what to do out of a recovering economy, and understanding that businesses are in different playing fields right now, depending on how they survived 2020. So it's a tool to use for a larger conversation.
So touching on the pandemic, Zach, I want to talk about merit increases and how that has changed.
Absolutely. So a part of the study is also taking a look at compensation in general, not necessarily just the base pay, but taking a look at the other compensation that goes into the total rewards package that you offer your employees. And one of the indicators and one of the information that we want to know is the thoughts about what is being budgeted for merit increase pay. As Kristie mentioned, there is challenges towards retaining employees, especially coming off of this past year. And that when we last collected this information and displayed it in September through our compensation trend study, trying to predict what are going to be the merit increase percentages for this year, 2021, it wasn't bleak, but it was on the border of bleak in terms of what organizations were considering. And it's not necessarily that, that it was a dire situation. I just think that at that time, when we collected the information, so much was unknown about what to expect out of this pandemic. And when we were collecting the information, it was very much, we were still in the process of understanding, well, when are things going to open up again? And little do we know that it would take until this month to have a lot of the comforts of our realities come back to us. So in September, when we presented the information and showcasing that, on average, it was about 2.2% increase that was projected for, budgeting for merit increase across the population that we collected. To see now, then we collected this year for a reevaluation increased to 2.5% is positive. That's optimistic, that's showing intent, that's showing growth, that's showing that businesses are a lot more comfortable budgeting that dollar amount or that percentage into their overall strategy, which does give us an indication that the economy is looking to get stronger, looking to improve. We are looking to recover out of this, and businesses are being a lot more optimistic about it. But that's one side of the story. 2.5%, that is including those that are not producing or not budgeting for a merit increase or base pay increase, because everybody's in a different spot. Some industries in 2020 were booming, couldn't keep people in the door, couldn't have enough staff to meet demand, depending on the business and the product that they're being sold. Some very drastically had to take some very hard cuts and evaluations of how to survive out of that year. So going into this year, we have very different evaluations of how our organizations should be approaching it. So taking a look at this information of 2.5% on average to apply into your organization really comes into a strategy of looking at the full picture and understanding that organizations are going to be held up and kind of pushed for retention strategies and practices, as the coined term lately that I've been seeing the last couple of weeks, the great resignation is coming. where there's going to be more turnover, as we predicted in our 2021 turnover survey that was published earlier this year, that this will be a significant year of turnover. As organizations are feeling that pressure, how are they going to be strategic in applying the budgeted merit increase percentages that they can afford? And is it going to be universal across every single job category and job class? Or maybe it is going to be for those that are the most critical positions in the organization, if they can't afford it across the entire population. You know, merit increases are very much the performance of the employee. It's a retention strategy in terms of being able to have a intentful conversation for those that are improving, need to improve, or are high performers. And that is a part of the evaluation, but the budgeting process is pretty difficult when it comes to how well you either performed in 2021, or if you're still surviving and trying to get out of a deficit moving into 2021. So it's a very interesting time for organizations this year to discover how are they going to affect this. Some might not be able to afford the 3% that they have in years past. Some maybe can be affording more, but either way, it's a retention strategy that goes into making sure that they are keeping and retaining their employees.
Zach, you touched on the retention strategy. So Kristie, I kind of want to turn it over to you and get your thoughts on, should companies be transparent with their compensation strategy, and is that a way to retain talent?
Yes, yes, yes. Please. Yes, please. But this is, you know, a touchy topic when we talk about pay transparency. And I am not suggesting that HR teams or senior leadership teams go out and post everybody's salaries. I know some companies actually do that, but I'm not suggesting that. When I think about pay transparency, I think about that in two segments. And one is what Zach has been talking about, and that is the strategy. What is your overall compensation philosophy as an organization? What is your current strategy? And transparency first should start with an open discussion and understanding among the leadership team of what that is. You know, I often say that in my past career in HR, as an HR professional, I used to say to my leaders, you know, I should be able to walk out and ask each of you, and you should be able to tell me what that is. But I also know from my years as an HR practitioner that often didn't happen. Pay is painful to talk about, and it's complicated. So first level of transparency is the leaders in an organization need to know what our strategy is. And especially, as Zach alluded to, in 2020, 2021, and 2022, it really shouldn't look like the strategy that you've deployed prior to those years. Organizations right now at this moment in time are going to need to flex and have a different approach. The second level of transparency that I think about is the ability to have those challenging conversations between leader and employee about the employee's pay. In any year that we've conducted employee engagement surveys, we always have a pay category. We have a couple of statements in there around pay. One is, I understand how my pay is determined. Our norm for agreement for that statement is in the 60s. It's terrible, which means that, you know, if you ask an employee, how are you paid? They don't really know the whole story in any year. The second question that we often ask is, compared to other organizations, pay here is competitive. And that's an important question because we're trying to gauge the perception of alternatives. If I leave here, could I get some higher pay, better pay if I go somewhere else? What are employees' perceptions around that? And then the third important question is, in this organization, I am paid fairly for the work that I do. And again, all three of those statements, the norm is in the 60s. So there's a lot of opportunity not to try to get employees to fall in love with their pay. I'll be the first to tell you, I'd always want more pay. I've never turned that down. But to be able to reconcile where I am in my pay today, is that really enough, or is an alternative better? You know, you don't want to lose talent because they feel like if they leave your organization, they're going to have a better experience at a different organization, only to discover that it's not true. You want them to be able to evaluate their alternatives. And so for leaders to be able to say, you know, this is how we approach pay in general, and this is how we're awarding your merit this year. Not only does that require that a leader be knowledgeable of the comp philosophy and the comp strategy of the organization, it also requires that the leader is knowledgeable about the employee's performance. And a lot of times, you know, employees will say, well, you're paying me this, or I'm getting this amount, but I know Fred over there is getting more, and I don't think that's fair. So that's the squishiness of those discussions, is to be able to say, okay, I understand that you feel that way, or you know that, here's how you're paid. So that requires a lot of understanding and a lot of prep, and honestly, you know, sometimes practice before actually having those conversations. But those conversations are important because you're giving the employee the information for the employee to then decide whether or not this is working for the employee. Of course, you want them to stay with you, but I know most leaders would say, if you know as an employee that you could have a better total rewards package somewhere else, total experience, you know, you wouldn't fault them for leaving, but you want that employee to really be able to make that true total decision.
Kristie, I think that's some wonderful points, and I think you're highlighting a lot of what we discussed in our summary of the study, of knowing specifically your total compensation package and everything that goes into it. And that very much includes culture. How your culture is very much a determining factor of satisfaction, but also can help the pay conversation. The importance and the value that an employee feels in an organization might be a determining factor that pay doesn't have to be in that conversation. So it's not necessarily just looking at how you're stacking up or how you're benchmarking to your compensation of your staff. It's taking a look at the full total picture, the full compensation package that you offer, the benefits, the fringe benefits, the culture that's involved with it, the type of opportunities for growth. Those things that go into the conversation of a performance review should be highlighting all of those factors as well, of why that person fits specifically in your organization. And I think it's important to know that full total compensation package to be able to explain then all of the questions an employee would have coming back to you.
Yes. Now, you know, that is critical. I'm glad you brought that up. Culture, it is such a powerful component of the employee experience and of the total rewards package. We know from our engagement survey data that employees that feel valued and feel a part of the organization's purpose are likely to stay engaged. And we also know from our research that those who are fully engaged where they are will remain with an organization and will remain engaged in spite of dissatisfiers that they have in an organization. So if employees feel like they really are doing good work and they're valued for the work that they're doing, yes, pay is definitely a factor. We know it's important, but it is hard to leave a place where you feel like you're really integrated and doing a good work and you're part of something. It's hard to leave that for the unknown. And that culture of letting people really know the mission, vision, values, to sign on to it and to influence it goes a long way. So you're right. You know, a lot of times we don't think about that, but culture is definitely a part of the total rewards package.
Well, before we leave our listeners with any resources that we have available at MRA, I do want to just open it up to either of you have any additional words of wisdom you want to share around retention, employee engagement, compensation, anything like that.
Words of wisdom. Zach, anything come to mind for you? I'm thinking.
Yeah, I would, with a lot of, we have 473 positions in the study. We do a variety of different specific industry surveys throughout the year that get into more skilled positions. We have a lot of information, a lot of data that we collect to pass on to you. My advice is to start small. If you think that you have questions around your strategy, or you want to use these tools to help identify specific areas, that's perfect for just that start. The full strategy and the understanding and the education, as Kristie's been talking about, takes time, and it takes a lot of effort to it. So start small if you feel that maybe you're a little bit behind the eight ball on this information. In terms of what's happening in our economy, in the marketplace, in terms of retention and recruiting and growing, hopefully a vastly growing and a booming economy, that would be wonderful to see. It's going to be continued rocky ripple effects of this pandemic. And as I've been saying to some members, hang in there, because it's going to be continued change and continued new information. Just even last week with the CDC new recommendations has drastically changed HR departments and what they've had to focus on in the last week. So sorry to say, but I think that this is going to be continued change and turmoil for a little bit until we can have some stability coming. So hang in there and start small.
I think that was the advice that we gave at our last Facebook Live, was hang in there.
All right, so I'm on brand.
Kristie, is there anything you would like to add?
I think this was definitely a topic where I know a lot of leaders just want to put the burden and the onus on the HR team. And I would say to the HR team, this is the time where you definitely have to pull those leaders in. They are just as important in being able to have these discussions as you. Yes, I would say the HR team needs to know the data. We want you to take advantage of the data in our report and to educate the leaders, but the leaders are critical in really having those conversations with employees. And right now, the comfort level of having those conversations is even more important, because we know not only from MRA data, but from other studies that coming out of 2020, so many people right now are reevaluating the type of work that they've been doing and whether or not it's meaningful to them. So that adds a whole nother layer of complexity to retention, and how great it would be if leaders could really comfortably sit down and talk with employees. I know you got a lot going on, but this is time well spent to think about and talk about what's important to your employees right now. And if they're reevaluating, now would be a good time to see if it's at all possible to take their current skill set and transfer it to a different position in your organization. Because in addition to the culture and the total rewards, if we feel like we're learning and growing, we're also more likely to stay. So those would be the words of wisdom I would impart today.
Yeah, I think both of you have both great pieces of advice. I do like to leave our listeners with a little bit of resources available to them. So if either of you want to touch on how can MRA help, what resources do our members and non-members have at their fingertips?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start by highlighting our compensation studies that we do throughout the year. We do have one of them out in the field right now that is being collected. our national IT and engineering compensation study. So these are looking at the skill positions of IT and engineering, and again, producing the averages of the market study, the market pay range for those positions, but not necessarily locally, but from a national perspective. MRA is a part of a larger association called Employers Associations of America, and we partner with those other associations to collect this information in a total mass national perspective, because we know these are kind of the hot button, really highly skilled positions where accurate information is necessary. So National IT and Engineering Compensation Study is open right now. It is open through June 18th. If you would like to participate in that, if you are a member or not a member, we'll take your participation. You can contact me or contact our survey department, surveys@mranet.org, and we're happy to get you set up with that. But we do have other studies coming up that are looking more at the change in the business trends that we've talked about some today. We have upcoming our compensation trends, which is going to, again, focus on that merit increased pay as a big component of that, but also just pay strategies in general, what other businesses are doing. We have our national business trends, and as well as policies and practice that is coming throughout the year as well. So a lot of information coming our way. In terms of how we can affect the compensation and total rewards conversation in your organization, MRA is also equipped with wonderful compensation specialists, compensation directors that can help with that strategy conversation or the market pricing of positions. We also do have total compensation statements that we can produce for your employees to give a full picture of your total rewards package for the employees and what their true value is that's beyond just the base pay. So again, more detail going to what Kristie's talking about, the transparency that goes into employers understanding their worth and understanding how their organization values them is a key step towards the employee understanding and being satisfied with their employment. So we do have a lot of resources on our website as well for articles, our blogs, our different aspects. You can receive the executive summary of this benchmark study on our website for free. So you can go to our website and look at the benchmark compensation study and take a look at the information that we have in the executive summary, the high level results of it. So plenty of information for you to consume. If that's what you want to do this weekend, I'll be very happy, because then you'll be really informed going into next week. But I know there's quite a bit of information on there. If there's anything that you need help with or any kind of questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me or Kristie or Courtney, and we're happy to point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I'll drop the link to the executive summary in the comments after this event. I'd also like to point out we have an awesome employee engagement expert online with us right now. If you need any help with that, she's wonderful and more than happy to help, I know. But I want to thank everyone for joining us live today, and those of you that will watch this later on. I will drop some of those resources in the comments. Have a wonderful afternoon.